Marxism is a difficult and contentious body of work, but it is also more than this. It is a body of revolutionary theory with the purpose of changing the world. As Marx 1976 famously said, the philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point is to change it. This makes Marxist analysis political in a quite specific way. But this is not to suggest that other methods and approaches are apolitical. On the contrary, Marxism insists that all are ultimately political. What makes the Marxist methodology different from other historical approaches to culture is the Marxist conception of history.
The full statement of the Marxist approach to history is contained in Marx's preface and introduction to a contribution to a critique of political economy. Here Marxists outline the new famous base, superstructure account of social and historical development. In Capital, Marxist argues that each significant period in history is constructed around a particular mode of production. This is the way in which the society is organized. Example, slave, feudal, capitalist to produce the necessities of life. In general terms, each of mode production produce specific ways of obtaining the necessities of life, social relationship between workers and those who control them, and social institution.
Classical Marxism. The Marxist theory of culture claims that a mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. This claim is based on certain assumptions about the relationship between base and the superstructure. It is on this relationship between base and superstructures that the account of culture rests. After Marx's death in 1883, Friedrich Engels had to explain many of the subtleties of Marxism to younger Marxists who, in their revolutionary enthusiasm, threatened to reduce it to a form of economic determinism. However, this does not mean that the ideas of the ruling class are simply imposed on subordinate classes. Althusserianism, a problematic, according to Althusser, is made up of the assumptions, motivations, underlying ideas, and so on that are used to create a text, such as an advertisement. It is suggested that a text structure is shaped as much by what is unsaid as it is by what is spoken. According to Althusser, in order to properly comprehend the meaning of a text, we must be aware of not just what is in it, but also the assumptions that underlie it, which may not appear in the text itself in any obvious way, but exist solely in the text problematic. To begin, Althusser rejects a mechanistic interpretation of the base superstructure formulation, focusing instead on the concept of social production. According to Althusser 1969, a social formation consists of three practices: economic, political, and ideological. The relationship between the base and the superstructure is not one of expression, with the superstructure acting as a passive reflection or expression of the base, but one of necessity, with the base requiring the superstructure to exist. The relationship between ideology and the real conditions of existence at the levels of representation, myths, conceptions, ideas, images, and discourses is both real and imaginary. There are genuine conditions and there are ways we portray these situations to ourselves and others. This is true for both dominant and subordinate classes. Ideologies not only convince oppressed people that everything is okay in the world, but they also convince ruling groups that exploitation and oppression are important actions. A problematic, according to Althusser, is made up of the assumptions, motivations, underlying ideas, and so on that are used to create a text. Such as an advertisement, it is suggested that a text structure is shaped as much by what is unsaid as it is by what is spoken. According to Althusser, in order to properly comprehend the meaning of a text, we must be aware of not just what is in it, but also the assumptions that underlie it, which may not appear in the text itself in any obvious way, but exist solely in the text problematic.
Hegemony is for Gramsci a political concept developed to explain the given exploitative and oppressive nature of capitalism, the absence of socialist revolution in the Western capitalist democracies. Hegemony involves a specific kind of consensus. A social group seek to present its own interest as the general interest of the society as a whole. Hegemony is organized by those whom Gramsci designated organic intellectuals. Each class creates organically its own intellectual, one or more strata of intellectual which give a homogeneity and awareness of its own function. At least two things can be referred to a post-Marxism: hegemony and socialist strategy, toward a radical revolution by Ernesto Laclau and Chantal Mouffe, 2001. Is a seminal contribution to a post-Marxism. If our intellectual project in this book is post-Marxist, it is plainly also post-Marxist, says Democratic Politics. To be a post-Marxist is not to abandon Marxism in search of something better, but rather to aim to alter Marxism by incorporating current theoretical breakthroughs from feminism, postmodernism, and post-structuralism, and Lacanian psychoanalysis, more post-Marxist than post-Marxist, Laclau and Mouffe. The invention, a collaboration between Marxism and New Feminism, ethnic, national, and sexual minorities, protest movement, and anti-institutional ecology struggle waged by marginalized population. The anti-nuclear movement, and typical forms of social struggle in capitalist bureaucracy countries. The concept of discourse is crucial to post-evolution Marxism according to Laclau 1993. A discursive approach underlying hypothesis is the perception, thought, and action are all possible. Depends on organization of a meaningful field that exists before any factual immediacy.